So I've got today, I have Allie Bro from Sun Realty and Michelle Hodges from Meyer, what used to be Meyer Real Estate, Meyer Vacation Rentals, under the parent company of SH Enterprises. And the reason I've gathered you here today is because both of you are managing in-market companies and manage over 1,000 properties in those markets in two of the most popular vacation rental destinations in the United States. And there are special challenges that come along with once you start to become the big dog in town. And I think that in both of your cases, there are pretty much two, right? There are two market leaders, and then everyone kind of staggers down from that. But one of the questions I have for you just starting out, well, first of all, we'll do this. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the vacation rental business, Allie.
My father started Sun Realty in 1980. So that's how I started at Sun Realty. He did not hire me. They were looking for a reservationist, and I needed health insurance. So unbeknownst to him, I applied for a job as a reservationist. Obviously, they knew who I was, and I was hired, and that's where I started. And I kind of progressed through the company, various channels. I got licensed, did some rental management, left the company for a little while, was asked to apply for another job, and I got that, and then kind of again just progressed through a few different departments, and most recently as president of the company. I was promoted to president in October of 2007.
Same question, Michelle. Pretty similar story.
Right. So my mom, who shout out Sheila, is in the back of the room. She didn't start Meyer Real Estate, but she had been there since before I was born and became a managing partner at some point in time, and then bought the company out at some point in time, and I never wanted to have anything to do with it. Until one day, actually, it was a very scary time for our family. She got very sick and ended up in the hospital, and I'm the youngest of 4 children. And I just graduated from college, and I was fledgling, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be in her shadows. But my sister and my 2 brothers looked at me, and they were like, Michelle, you're nominated. So I say that lightheartedly, but I knew I wanted to be in hospitality. I had some awesome internships in college, and when I realized that hospitality was the field I wanted to be in, it made sense to get involved with Meyer, and that was about 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I started in guest relations. I did not want to be bop in to the company. People obviously knew who I was and have expectations of anything. So I started there for a couple of years, and 13 years later, here I am.
Both of you had some pretty big shoes to fill along the way. Were there challenges? I'm going to start with you because I actually, Michelle and I have been in the same market. So I was actually a competitor of Michelle's at Kaiser Realty before Wyndham bought the company. Not an easy position to be in Gulf Shores, Alabama. But I've personally watched your mother and was incredibly inspired by your mother throughout my years in Gulf Shores, especially as a young woman and a young woman who wanted to be a career person. She was able to do things in that market that the men were not able to do. And there was quite a good old boy network in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Not that there's not one in the Outer Banks, quite a bit. So I was thinking, like, it was big shoes for you, Michelle. And there were a lot of leaders, there were a lot of executives in your company that had been in their roles for a long time. How did you handle that?
I was my biggest challenge. I had to learn to get outside of my head. So when I started with the company, my biggest fear was not having a name for myself because of the reputation that had been created that I was walking into. And I was young and eager, and I had lots of plans, and I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to do my own thing and to be known as my own person, and I was afraid that wouldn't be. And that fear is really what I had to get out of my head. I had to stop anticipating what other people in the company assumed they knew of me or what I thought they assumed my motives were. And after I started with the organization and I had an opportunity to learn and grow and build relationships, those thoughts disappeared as I was able to establish myself. And credit to the executives in the organization and Sheila as my mom. as I had an opportunity to learn and grow, they really stepped out of the way and let me make mistakes and let me learn and become the person I am today. So, had my fears back then been true or realized, I think I would have been kind of stomped out. I would have had a ceiling, or I wouldn't have been able to experience my own adventure, if you will. So I'm grateful for all of those individuals, her as well as the other leaders on the team, for giving me that opportunity.
Allie, with you, I mean, was it similar? Was it a similar experience for you?
Sun Realty's always had a lot of female leadership. So while there's, at the time, I think early on I didn't really see the Old Boy Network as much as I did later on. But we've always had a lot of strong female leadership. And for me, it was probably the same thing, getting out of my own head and trying to establish my own leadership style with respect to what my father had created. By the time I was really invested in leadership, he had stepped away. He also owns a vineyard in Virginia, so he was focused on that. So when I stepped into a leadership position, I won't say there was a leadership vacuum, but there had not been somebody who was hands-on and cohesively keeping things running. So we had lots of strong department heads, but nobody who was really making sure on a daily basis that there was communication. So I will say that we were in danger of being siloed. So that was one challenge that I had to overcome. But and then, like you said, getting out of your head and not wondering what people are thinking. Well, she's only in this position because of her father. That was something to overcome, and some people did think it. But hopefully, through some hard work and trying to gain respect, you can overcome that.
There's no way people don't think it, in the beginning.
And
especially,
it's true. It's true. I mean, I've got to say, that's the reason I'm in this position. I like to think that I worked hard to establish myself and the credibility, because he wouldn't have just said, this is my baby that I started in 1980, run with it, I don't care what happens. But that is why I'm there.
But in our industry right now, the exit plan is either leave it to your family or sell it to someone else. So we have a lot of legacy companies in our industry. And when you think about your children or stepchildren or the next generation that's coming, do you think in terms of how you will coach the next generation?
My Boykin Spaniels aren't going to do much with the future of Meyer Vacation Rentals.
You got work to do.
They're smart, but...
So, when you look at like the co-op, the opportunity of having an employee-owned company or different types of things like that, have you guys thought through that at all?
So, for me, it's it's at the end of the day, this is why I'm at Meyer. I'm not there because I have to be. It's when I realized in my career what a special culture we had. And growing up and that expectation that we maybe sometimes think people see of us, like, oh, you're there because of that relationship. I never grew up with, when I was like toddler, yes, I knew my mommy was the boss and I thought that was cool. When I got a little bit older, I never associated her owning or being Meyer. She has such an awesome team and network of people who have been there for decades and built careers there. And having that opportunity in any town, in a small beach town, as it's growing and developing as quickly as ours has, to know that there's an environment where someone can contribute their talent and energy and build something together, I like to believe that that's what our culture and our brand is about. Since it was started in 1967, the people that have been a part of our success are the reason that we exist today. It's why we are who we are. I just happen to be this tiny little sliver today, but I hope in every other person of our leadership team and our housekeepers and our front line that they feel like they're a part of that too. In the office, I've started calling it the ripple effect. We're a part of what the organization is today, paying it forward for those that will be a part of it later. So it's not so much an ownership game, or I do value legacy. I don't have children, so it's not so much who it's going to next, but
just
it's all of us paving the way to keep it going and keeping that dream alive.
Not so different from Lady Carnarvon and Highclere.
I will
never
take that.
owned that, exactly. But she's just preserving the estate for the next generation, and that she knows that's what her role is. Do you feel the same way as
Same way, and I don't have kids either. So, and I've thought about the succession plan. I'm nowhere near that, and my father's not either. He doesn't call himself retired. So there isn't a succession plan in place right now. But I would say, I'll add to what you said, it takes a while to really understand the privilege of being involved in a legacy situation and a family business. And that's something that I don't know if I took it for granted or didn't really consider it early on. Certainly not when I was growing up, because I'm the same as you. I didn't want anything to do with it. My dad works too long. I would never want it. Why would anybody want to spend so much time focused on work? And obviously that changed, but I agree with building on the company culture and really learning how much it takes to keep things running. I think it changes your perspective, and it really has made me very proud now that I truly understand how much he worked and to establish the legacy that is Sun Realty and how much it means to so many people. And that's something else that I think everybody in this room probably doesn't fully consider, that I've tried to impart on the staff is, and I know you've asked about community involvement, what we all do to support our communities. It's not just paychecks for our people. It's bringing people to our areas and how many businesses rely on that. And the Outer Banks is fortunate to have fantastic visitors bureaus, both with the Outer Banks and Curry Tuck, that really work hard to bring visitors to our destinations, which is amazing. And I can't discount the importance of that support. But we spend a lot of dollars marketing as well, and it's impactful to the community. And I think that's very meaningful.
Trying to decide if I want to go there right now. Maybe I'll come back to that. We'll come back to your marketing efforts in a minute. Going back to the community piece of it, both of you are one of the top 2 largest companies in your area, isn't that correct?
Yes.
So there are, in that, the 4 of you collectively, you 2 and the other 2, spend the majority of the money in their destination on things like sponsorships, events with the CVB. You're probably the first person the CVB comes to for money. As new companies come along, would you advise them, whether they're small or whatever, to start getting involved with the CVB when they feel like, well, Meyer's taking care of that or Sun's taking care of that? Like, how would you address that? I'll start with you, Ellen.
I'd say pick your favorite grassroots charity and focus on trying to do something with them. There's loads of events that are charity centric. You can, if you don't have money, you can provide volunteers. That's something else we do at Sun, in addition to lots of sponsorships and things like that, and promotions. Some that are up front, some that are just behind the scenes. We empower our employees. We allow charity time. It's usually like 4 to 8 hours. They get paid by Sun Realty, and they get to go work at their charity of choice, which is just kind of a cool way to actually be out in the community. So I think there's lots of ways, and I do think it's important to put it out there, because if there is somebody who's not happy with wherever they're staying, whether they're in a hotel and they're like, what's up with this vacation thing? You need to get your name out in the community so that when they're at that restaurant talking to somebody, they understand what's going on and what we do. And by supporting community events, I think that's a way to get your name out there.
You guys still do a lot of it too at Meyer.
Right. So stand up, show up, stand up, speak up. So Donna Watts, who's president, another awesome person in our community, she's president of the South Baldwin Chamber of Commerce, which is, we have 2 major chambers, and that's one. Something that she always says, and we have opportunities, right? I mean, we don't have to be members of a chamber or contribute to various community sponsorships or events. We don't have to send volunteers. These are options, right? Nobody's forcing us to do it. But you certainly want a voice when you have a need to be heard. And if you're not making an intentional effort to be involved on that level and encourage your team to be involved on that level and participate in your community, you're not being heard. And that's a scary place to be. So at any level, anybody in a business can be involved in a localized level, regional level. It's our obligation.
So looking at how the industry has changed, shifting over to that, since you joined the team, Allie, how have you seen the Outer Banks vacation rental industry change over the last several years?
Well, the easy one is the obvious one. I mean, when I started taking reservations, we had more power. They weren't online looking for anything. They were calling up to me, and there was that sense of urgency. If that first house wasn't available, they were okay. The second one, if that third home on their list wasn't available, they were starting to get panicked. And we saw.
And this was from the vacation guide.
This was from the vacation.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, reading it, this one, it flipped to page 84. Now 112. I mean, it was.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember the first time that there was a big house with a pool, and we're like, what? Who needs a pool at the beach? That is the craziest thing.
It's crazy.
Or a
totally
72-inch TV.
Yes, it's true, and I think that what's today's indulgence becomes tomorrow's expectation. And now you look at all the crazy amenities that some of these homes have, and the home has become the destination as much as the beach. And I think people walk in and say, "Wow, we're never going to leave this." And sometimes it happens, much to the chagrin of the local restaurants. But I think that the expectation of comfort, convenience, and luxury has definitely raised the bar.
For you came in in 07?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're looking, wow, that's not 12 years ago. That's
I came in on the tail
end.
end. I came in on the tail end of our Treasures of the Gulf, which was what we called our rental brochure.
And the front end of a recession.
and then a horrific oil spill. So it had been a couple of very interesting years there, but it's the pace of change really in the last decade, the last 5 years, the last year. It's just ever evolving and increasing. But when we operated in those days, we knew that the Treasures of the Gulf was going to go out January 1st, right? We knew this. So we knew that our owner acquisitions had a sense of urgency. They all had to be in by the end of the year or some point in time to get included in that brochure. We knew when we had to staff up. We knew when those mailers went out and when the calls were coming in and those bookings were going to get made, those summers were going to get booked for the exact same amount of time, weekly minimum, and then, yeah, absolutely. So the website changes, partnerships change, marketing changes, the world changes, expectations change, and you have to learn to start to pivot. Policies, the way you do business in the past could be just pretty standard throughout the course of the year. We set the pace, right? We were that pace setter, and you have other disruptions, positive disruptions that come into the marketplace. Our learning curve has been pivoting to adjust to them quickly so that we stay the pace setter and we don't fall behind because of other entrances into the market.
I think both of you, curiously, neither one of you list on HomeAway. Both of you rely on your direct marketing efforts and your feeder marketing efforts strongly to reach your guest in today's world. Big note on your vacation guide. At Kaiser, we used to try to beat her by a week to get hers out. It's pretty cutthroat in this market. So, actually, which was my first magazine that I did. To be fair. But looking at the distribution landscape and the whole idea, I mean, a lot of people don't take on the cost of marketing on these channels. It's not just the cost of paying HomeAway or Airbnb or TripAdvisor or whatever. There's a cost of managing those listings and the cost of dealing with the kind of guests that you're getting from those channels, which may not be setting those expectations for the guests. It's looking back to that it's easier to do in a direct marketing effort than it is through a distribution channel. Allie, why did you decide not to list on the channels? It
was never a never say never kind of thing. It was never like we're not going to do this. We don't need it. We don't want it. And it was scary when everybody was jumping on that boat and we were not. And you were hearing, we're getting a ton of bookings. Again, very fortunate to be on the Outer Banks. So we didn't need, HomeAway came in and said it's important for us to make a name for vacation rentals, which I understand in other areas. They weren't a known commodity. So I know that smaller markets, they were struggling to get recognition for what they were offering. So that was a very, very noble cause. But I was always wary about putting all of our eggs in that basket because, number one, and they've gone through a few different business models, but when I ran the numbers, that would have had to have been the primary investment for our marketing dollar. So I would have been surrendering that as almost our sole booking channel. And I wasn't comfortable doing that because I also knew that was just surrendering control and, first taste is free. And then you begin to rely on it, and I didn't want that for us. And I always said I didn't want to be, these companies had the keys to the bus, they were driving the bus, and they were in charge of the destination, and that's what made me nervous, is not knowing their ultimate goal. And I knew as long as everything was good, it was going to be good. But the second we said, I went off this bus, we have nowhere to go. And that scared me.
Michelle, you pulled off. You actually did put your properties on there and then got rid of them. What
We
was your
did. I
decision?
think we were somewhat of a late adopter. It was probably, I don't know what year we started listing, but we had been to a few years worth of IRMAs and courted, I'll say courted for quite some time with HomeAway and VRBO, and decided to list and did for a few years. We controlled our calendars pretty tightly. We wanted, I would say, in my mind at the time, having a partner that you could utilize to reach markets where we were not strategically spending was a benefit. I knew, or our marketing team knew, that there was just not enough ROI to be in certain places. We don't have big spend in California. We just don't have a huge guest base there. You know, name probably 35 other states where they're just not a predominant market for us. So if we're going to partner with somebody to get out there, it's, you know, it's not a never for the sake of never sort of a decision, but that was our thought process when it started, and over years it kind of morphed. The partnership, from my perspective, turned into, I grew up in the company learning to be weary of bad profit. You can make profit. If it's bad profit, it's bad for the business. It's not going to get you far. There's bad business as well. And for us, and the way that things shift and changed, and it works for a lot of people, so I'm not here to speak negatively so much about it, but with our experience, it was just time. It was single digits for our business. It was not a huge source of revenue for us. It was the specific partnership and the terms of that partnership that I didn't feel led to good business practices for whichever reason, you know, that you would pick. So I am not against OTAs. In fact, we will try our hand at some again in a more strategic manner. We've learned our lesson from times gone by. We won't dump all of our inventory on one and allow them an opportunity to compete against us in the social world. I mean, they obviously are to a huge degree. Their budgets are larger than mine, but it's a battle we all fight, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you want to know your customers. So much of this, I don't know if y'all have picked up on this, so much of today has led to words like authenticity and trust and relationships, and us not forgetting that we're in the hospitality industry and there's no separating the host from the experience. So whatever channel we use to reach out to those guests, it's staying in control of that and making sure that you're authentic, that you have a trustworthy partnership if you're allowing someone to help you in that marketing arena, and that you're in control of the experience. We felt out of control and had to pull off. So,
Leslie Preston, who's speaking tomorrow, she's got 2,000 in New Zealand, and she has given the same information on that for her, it's about the end-to-end guest experience. From the time that they find your brand, the whole thing about the brand with Lady Carnarvon too, I thought that was really interesting in her brand
feel.
perspective. Exactly. And I think that that whole ability to protect the guest experience in the entire shopping process, the selection process, the pre-arrival, the whole stay, and then the post-arrival, that's a whole part of it now. And I don't know that it used to be as much. Booking.com is one that lists properties so next to hotel properties and vacation rental properties on top of it. So a lot of times I don't even know what they're booking. So I think the end-to-end experience is what seems to be the continuity, you know, of among the people who are really making the decision to be a little bit more independent.
I agree, and a lot of talk has been about protecting your brand and creating your brand, and that's part of it, because otherwise, the benefit and curse of those sites is you're literally lumped with everybody else. So part of my other concern was I felt like by doing that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you stay, just we're the same as everybody else. And we're all kind of doing the same thing. But I think our brand really does matter, and as you said, Sherry, creating that experience.
With so much consolidation in the industry now, we see a lot of new players emerging that are acquiring other companies. Have you looked at growing regionally, maybe into Ocean Isle Beach or Bald Head or?
We did many, many years ago. We looked into going down into Florida because, hey, who wouldn't want to be in Florida? It's super cool. It was just I said it's just too much of a challenge. It's enough. On the Outer Banks, we represent homes over about 120 miles of coast, and I said that's spread out enough. That's good.
You've got a lot.
Yeah, that's
You've
good.
got a lot of ground to cover in
It's
a
good.
really high traffic time.
It's good, and I know what it's like
Yeah.
to have to go through a hurricane or something like that just on the Outer Banks, and I'm like, what do I do if you're that far away? You can't manage anything. You have to really trust people. It's not going to be easy to get to Florida if there was a bad situation. I don't live there, and it was just the risks were too much.
For you, Michelle, you at one time started growing out regionally and then kind of contracted that back. Am I wrong about that?
We, so you mentioned SH Enterprises earlier, which is our parent company. So under our parent company, Meyer Vacation Rentals is one of 5 entities. Century 21 Meyer Real Estate is another. And that company did brand out somewhat throughout the state, and we pulled it back. We have toyed with the idea, similar. The market has to be right. The company has to be right. You want to feel like you're in control. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a big decision. And I hope that our future does include that still. Right now, our diversification is in a very special sister company that some of you toured this morning, which is Star Textile Services. So right now we're very focused on maintaining, and that company has grown significantly over the past few years, expanded out of Alabama and Foley area into here in the New Orleans area. So we've been focused on that growth, and we're not quite as spread out as you are in the Outer Banks, but we're over about 40 miles and are growing in our own market. So we're
Well, it's deep or wide, right?
deep or wide, right? So, but absolutely, we've toyed around with, similar to you. I mean, we've looked at maybe Gatlinburg, or you want to go places that complement your business, right? And maybe we're very summer oriented, beach goers. So what's the opposite side of that? We probably think about that in terms of our workforce development too. We're so seasonal in one area. How do you level that out? But we don't have any immediate plans. We can start some rumors though.
You know, I'm all about some rumors. I do think that looking at the future of the industry, so we have a lot of, like, again, going back to the growing multi-destination companies. They're not in your market yet. Am I correct on that? You don't have a Vacasa or a Turnkey in the Outer Banks yet?
Not
Largely
yet. Not
because
yet.
of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has made things difficult.
Yes.
And in a good way, I think, in the sense that, well, good or bad, I don't know. But the North Carolina Real Estate Commission has got some very strict regulations around vacation rentals, which creates a barrier to entry for a lot of new entrants, coming into the space. So there are 16 large vacation rental management companies
right.
in the Outer Banks. And I think do you think that barrier to entry has helped the destination, or do you think it's hurt the destination?
I'm not sure. I hadn't really thought about it. I guess it's good for us so we don't have to worry about one of them just popping in, because there are cumbersome regulations between trust accounting, the Vacation Rental Act, things you have to have in your lease agreement, and just quite frankly the ability for a guest tenant at any time to send a letter to the Real Estate Commission, and they all have to be addressed.
Wow.
Yes, even if
so there's a high level of
no
accountability.
There is a very high level of oversight, responsibility, and accountability.
The Alabama Real Estate Commission also is a factor there. They're in the same situation. There are a lot of large companies. Not quite as strict, though. And so owners have a much more easier time renting their own property, I think, in Alabama than they do in North Carolina. And that kind of changed the dynamic there as well after the hurricanes. So a lot of those homeowners went on their own. Do you feel like most of those owners are coming back to property management now?
Some of them do. I think in our area, an owner does not have to have a real estate license or be a broker to manage their own property. They can pretty much do whatever they want. In our area, when things get really tight in the real estate market, what we tend to see are a lot of agents turning property managers, and they'll tend to pick up 3 or 5 units and manage on behalf of their clients. And I have some other folks here in the market, so they may see that too. So we have a lot of individual agents who come into the market as mini managers. And then when the market picks up well and things seem to be back on the up and up, you see movement again. So
You do have entrance in your Vacasa bought
Mandoki. Probably, I know, God bless him. He was a fabulous human being. So maybe August, October,
Yeah.
September, sometime late fall timeframe.
And Turnkey's been in that market for a while. Do you see these multi-destination companies gaining significant traction in the Gulf Shores, Orange Beach market? Do you consider them a competitor?
I don't. I mean, so I'll say this about our competitive area. We were talking about it at lunch today, actually. We have a really, really unique setup in Gulf Shores, Orange Beach. So we have an incredible CVB as well. Herb Malone has run our CVB since its inception. He was the president of our chamber before the CVB was created. So we have a lot of strong leadership in him. And the board of our CVB has been together for decades. They have, I think we still have quite a few original board members who sit around that table as industry partners. So while we all compete against each other, we have an awesome group that's willing to come together, sit around a table, discuss the destination and what we need to do to be strong and grow and communicate with each other as partners. So a lot of and maybe some of the other startups are folks that enter the market that choose not to be, we talked about this earlier, right? Not all of them choose a local outlet as their voice. And so sometimes they're missing from that group. And because of that, when you ask me if I consider them a competitor, they're in the market and they have units and they manage them. I don't perceive them in that same partner group that we're used to working in and day out.
Yeah, I think that's across the board. I think that's one of the things in watching these multi-destination companies grow is because the focus is on growth, and their success metrics are based on growth. Versus community, trust, relationships. It's kind of interesting that these companies have not chosen to engage in the community. It just seems like to me, if you really wanted to get there quickly and get a seat at the table, you would start engaging as soon as possible to get there. But it kind of creates another little level of a barrier to entry from getting to that next level of trust in the marketplace. Looking at the challenges that you think that we're going to face coming up in the future. You mentioned customer expectations continue to change, and that the whole idea that something that's brand new today is the expectation tomorrow. Owner expectations have also shifted. In your market, and with people moving between the large management companies, have you seen owner expectations shift in the Outer Banks?
I think owner expectations consistently want more for less.
Yeah.
And I think as the impetus is upon us to offer more by way of services and things like that, it's a struggle to maintain your profit margin and have a viable business model. It's hard to change owner expectations, and it's still, I mean, we still have a struggle having owners update their properties properly. And I'm a big fan of I say it ad nauseum. It's not a home, it's a vacation rental. And and I'm toying with this, and I can't decide what I want to do about it, but are they guests or are they tenants? Because a guest is a house guest. A tenant has rights, and that obligates you to responsibilities as the owner. So
That's interesting. That's kind of telling that story again that we hear a lot about now as people are building out their plans with their employees, that they start telling stories along the way. I think millennials need stories to be able to wear, but that's my age discrimination. But but the whole idea of is it a tenant or is it a guest becomes it's a huge differentiation between the two, in how maybe an employee or an owner service manager would be able to start looking
I love
at
the hospitality aspect of guest.
Yeah.
But in relaying to owners, I'm like, guys, we need to make sure they understand that there are obligations. These people have paid good money to stay in your home.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
For watching the industry change, what do you think's coming, Michelle? Like, what guest expectations, standards, regulations, and what are you seeing down the pipeline?
We all have our own individual brand, so we've talked some about that. As an industry, we have a brand. So whether you choose to be on OTAs or not, whatever individual choice we're making, as an industry, we're forming a brand. And you mentioned Booking.com a few minutes ago, and the guest experience, comparing to hotels, you didn't say this, but it's a little bit confusing even for me, and I'm in the industry, when I go to some sites and I'm just toying around trying to follow what I'm trying to shop for keeps escaping my clicks. Every time I click where I think I want to go, something else pops up that's not applicable to the unit that I was looking at. Google's entrance into the market, whatever site you may be on, consumers having information redacted, so you're kind of blind shopping from both ends. All of these things, I think, clutter our industry and provide this. It goes against everything we've been talking about, but to me, trust in the industry is going to be huge coming up. Making sure that our brands aren't just fluffy marketing words and pretty pictures and quotes that we pay brilliant content writers to come up with, but involvement in community, roots, care and respect, and being a part of something bigger than yourself, right? Having that gut feel that she was talking about, and history and passion for what you're doing, all of that somehow has to shine through to that end user. They're not getting that across the industry as a whole. So moving forward over the next couple of years, as that continues to dominate, as entrance into this market is so mass, we have to make sure that we are maintaining that feel that we all come to the table with here at these conferences, that individual, personal feel and touch, the host aspect of things, the experience that we control, and making sure that that consumer trusts our ability to deliver and our intent behind that.
Do any of you have any questions for these two? Yeah.
So thank you for this beautiful conversation. I resonated with the part of the conversation where you mentioned that as an industry we struggle with what is standard. Because as a guest, even a Airbnb that I'm sharing with someone is a vacation rental, and a professionally managed, company that has maybe thousands of people is also a vacation rental. And there is so much difference in what you can expect, the standard, and then when you go to a hotel as a product, you get consistency. You know exactly what you're buying. But I don't know as a user, when I buy from Sun Realty, how is that going to be different from buying from your website versus somewhere else? So what I want to hear from you is your thoughts on how do you ensure that your guests understand what your standard is, and how do you maintain a better standard to compete with a product like a hotel? So I'm kind of mixing two questions here, but what I'm trying to learn is, as professional managers, how do we differentiate and how do we put ourselves to a better guest experience standard?
You can start.
So this is what, in my opinion, makes the vacation rental industry extremely hard to scale, in my opinion. We've watched people do it unsuccessfully plenty of times. And we're watching lots of folks attempting it now and, waiting to see what happens. Every market is so unique and so different. So in my market, And it's something when you talk about scaling your business into other areas, you have to consider. We had hotels, but I say from my perspective, we grew up in vacation rentals. Our beach is it's barely 50 years old. I mean, incorporation. And in Orange Beach, it's 84, I think it became a city. So we're very new. And people didn't live there. It developed as a second home area. And from that, just was a natural fit to go into vacation rentals. So for us in our market, our client base has always known us for what we are in vacation rentals, right? We've always had a very consistent drive-to destination. So I think the market in your question has a different answer. If you're a drive-to destination, if you're a fly-in destination, if you have a high repeat guest base, which we certainly do, it's between 70 and 80%, versus a market that maybe is like New Orleans, and I don't know what their numbers are, but I would imagine their repeat guest base is very low, I would imagine. Just international travel and very different. So for us, we try to be consistent with our branding. We do the best we can with our website and photography and policies. We have a very tenured, out of the entire company, the most tenured people that we have on staff are in our guest sales department, the folks that are communicating with our guests. They know our area. We don't outsource that. They know our properties. They know our locations, so they can do a really thorough and relevant job explaining to a customer what they're getting and matching those expectations. But that's just my market. I'm sure that yours would be very different in how you make sure that your guests are getting the expectation from your brand. And if we spoke to someone who did business in this market, it would be different. So I think it's a challenging question, and it's challenging for the industry. Even talking about, do you provide shampoo and conditioner, and do I, is different from market to market, and what guests expect from that market's different. So I didn't really do a great job answering your question, other than to confirm that it is indeed a challenge.
And I would agree it's a challenge, but I think it goes back to a session I took earlier today, and it's making sure we've got the tools, we've got websites. It's not a small or a series of photos in a static brochure that you get one shot and it's done. It's making sure things are represented well, the information is on your website, the photos are accurate, and making sure the owner doesn't say, I don't like that photo, here's one with the view zoomed in. Let's use that one, I think it'll sell better. Use the old picture, the tree's smaller. Use the old picture, the house wasn't built beside me, and it's just making sure that you are accurately representing the house on the website favorably as you can, but don't over sugarcoat. Again, we're fortunate they get vacation rentals on the Outer Banks, but it's it's pricing, and we've also classified our properties, so there's some expectation of whether it's a Beach Classic or a Southern Comfort or Sun Select, what you're getting.
I hate to do this because this conversation can go on forever. You women are so smart, and I have so much respect for you. I'm sorry, did I hear something?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yeah. We have a party to go to.
I'm kidding. I'm so fast now, it's kind of 47, but I really
Joking.
want to have this question. I'm from Florida. I just noticed that, I think Michelle was mentioning about you see a lot of the mini managers going outside and then managing 3 or 4 property, right? So I don't know your market, but do you see any of this movement for homeowner coming down here, some other, just real estate involved too, buying property and they're doing renting themselves? Because I see a lot of time in my area, these people's coming in like a host, because now HomeAway and Airbnb, and they're so active, it's so good for the host renting out themselves. And they can be really good, authentical, and personal. They can do better than us, right? Do you see that movement? Is that some kind of competition in your area?
Well, my goal for me and anyone in my organization managing our properties would be to know them as well as our owners do, so that experience is just as authentic. I want to know the history of that house and how it works and operates, so that the guest, if they have any kind of an issue or an experience, they're getting information from us the same way that they would be an owner if they don't know how to work the TV or that the fan has a remote control or whatever. But to answer your question though, I don't see tons of that. There is some, absolutely. We have a lot of retirees that'll come down, and maybe they have a couple of condos, and maybe the wife will think that it would just be fun to welcome those guests and fun to take care of the property, and that lasts for some amount of time until the not fun part becomes more prevalent than the fun part. Or children. There's a lot of investors in our area who have young children, maybe in their 20s or 30s, and they think, okay, well, I'm going to let you try your hand at managing this property because you need a job. So you have responsibility, and that may last for some period of time. Right, but for the most part, and there's different types of owners, I think our area is predominantly investor owners who are looking for a return on their investment, right? And they want someone to manage it effectively and make sure that they're getting the revenue that they can earn from it. And that's usually, I mean, I'm biased, but it's usually done best by a professional property management company with the resources to get the job done. So yes, we do have some, not by any means a majority though.
Yeah, I think that whole idea of being an asset manager and being a lodging provider is one of the most difficult things to put together under one business model. And I think the challenge in our business is putting those two pieces. I mean, a stockbroker is not going to go open up a B&B. You know what I mean? So being an asset manager and being able to take care of that property is as much of a responsibility as it is to actually get revenue in and to service the guests. It's an interesting.
It is, and the VRBO model. Hey, if an owner has time and wants to do it themselves, give it a shot. Give it a shot. Like you said, it's all well and good, especially same thing. Absentee owners. So they're in Pennsylvania. Their home's on the Outer Banks. What do they do when the tenant checks in and says it's not clean? And you call your cleaner, and she says, "I forgot to tell you, I'm on vacation in Florida," or the tenant checks in and says, "There's still people here." Or the tenant checks in and says, "Where's all the TVs?" Or the tenant calls you at 3 in the morning and says, "The smoke alarm's going off. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to manage the taxes? How are you going to manage all the things you need to do?" And we're actually considering putting together so you think you want to do this, and it would be a double edge. Number one, it's our value proposition. You think all we do is take a call, rent your house, clean it, and it's done. There's a lot more that goes into it. Here's all the things we're doing, and by the way, if you want to give it a shot, here's all the things you're going to need to do, because they're held to the same standards as we are. And it's a lot.
So true. All right, so you guys are going to be around for the rest of the show too, so they'll be happy to meet with you. And thank you so much for doing this. I know that
Thank you for the
you
opportunity.
both were like,
Thank you.
"Can you send us the questions?" I'm like, "Yeah, no." I really appreciate it. Thanks for being so
Thank y'all so
gracious.
much.